what does bold leadership mean to you? Hey ladies, I'm back, and today I'm really excited to share with you Tara Newman. Tara is the founder of the Bold Leadership Revolution podcast. She is a strategist. She has decades and a shit ton of experience in the corporate world raising leaders, and has been an entrepreneur, she says, for mainly her whole life. And really redefining leadership. And I was really excited to have this conversation today because I believe motherhood is the greatest form of leadership. And when we're moving into this, I don't want to call it new age or new paradigm leadership, but when we're moving into this, compassionate leadership where vulnerable leadership, if you're a huge Brené Brown fan like I am, about vulnerability and how we can lead teams and we can lead people by compassion and empathy and coaching and teaching rather than, I am the leader and what I say goes. The power dynamic has shifted. And too often I see this in parenting as well. And it's just the old paradigm. It's the old way of thinking. But how we show up at home is typically a direct reflection of how we show up at work and vice versa. And that they're actually not separated. It's in conjunction. And there's a correlation and they mix very well together. And I truly believe that life alignment equals work alignment. That you don't necessarily need to quit your job or to try something new. But reintegrating your personal values and how you want to feel into your everyday life. And that is how we create radical shifts. So Tara and I had a pretty vulnerable conversation, and she stated some of her opinions about women and femalehood, motherhood, and what she believes to be true when it comes to women and leadership. So I'm really excited to, again, share another opinion on the podcast and maybe give you some aha moments, maybe trigger you, maybe rattle something inside of you. And I really invite you to continue this conversation. So head on over to Instagram at Mamas in Control, send me a message or post it and tag me on your Instagram stories, because this bold leadership revolution that Tara is all about, for me, I see it through a parenting lens, and I see it through how can we create alignment in our personal life and our professional lives. And I think Tara is doing that in a fabulous way, working with leaders and helping them revolutionize how they show up in a leadership role. So let's dive in. Welcome, Tara.
Hi, Heather. Thanks for having me on.
I'm so excited to have this conversation. We connected on Instagram and we've been going back and forth. And I think the common denominator here is bold leadership. And some may think it's trendy. Some may think, I'm not bold. I don't have that type of personality, or I've never been a leader. Mm-hmm. So I kind of wanted to pull back the curtains. It doesn't matter who you are. The women in my community, mostly moms, but not all of them are moms, and there's men that listen too. I think parenting in itself is like the number one leadership role in society. And I don't really think society sees it that way. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. And first, I just want to know a little bit about like what got you to this bold leadership, like lit up talking about leadership for women.
That's such a good question. So first, I know that I want to just say I agree with you wholeheartedly that parenting is really one of the, that first place of leadership, especially for women as mothers. I was thinking today because I've got 2 kids moving up One is going to middle school, one's going to high school. They're both going to sleepaway camp this summer for the first time. And we all joke around that entrepreneurship and owning your own business is like the ultimate personal development assignment. And I'm like, but I think that's not even 100% true, because motherhood right now is feeling like the ultimate personal development assignment for me. Navigating all the transitions in the fields and really understanding how I need to be leading in this moment. But in terms of leadership and bold leadership, I know a lot of people have said to me, even today, they don't feel like a leader, or they don't identify as a leader, but I have always identified as a leader. It's a very precocious child. When my mom asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I said in charge. And I think that was primarily because I had a dad who was running his own business, and I used to go into the office with him and watch him very much run around being in charge. But I always wanted to be in charge. And then I fell in love with psychology and business. And when I was going to school for clinical psychology, and then got accepted into a graduate school program and decided it was going to cost me a lot of money to get a PhD and a lot of years to come out. This was in the late 90s, working in a field that was very low paid, very restricted, and very full of paperwork and insurance arguments. And any therapist that I had talked to at the time, including my own, wasn't happy. So I put a pin in that for a year and went and worked. And then I went back to school and got my master's degree in industrial organizational psychology, which is business psychology, basically. So leadership has always been something that I've studied, whether it be innately or through school or the research that I've done in academia. I worked in a consulting capacity for a number of years before going back into an organization, because I always knew I wanted to run my own business, but I felt like I needed to go and be in the wild with leaders and really understand and observe them in their own habitat. I'm like a researcher, right? So, and then life happened and I kind of got stuck in corporate for a little longer than I anticipated. And I realized how we were truly misunderstanding leadership. We were misunderstanding what it takes to perform at a high level in a corporate environment. We were misunderstanding what productivity was and efficiency in a corporate environment. And so I left and I started coaching on my own privately. And that is really where I started formulating these ideas of bold leadership and realizing that things that were very innate to me were truth. And the things that I was seeing in a corporate environment that I was supposed to adapt to as truth and assimilate to as truth were not truth. And really what the world needed was more compassionate, vulnerable, kind, empathetic leaders who took a fierce stand for their beliefs, their values, their vision, and to really stand up and lead people and be that beacon for the masses and not for the people within the four walls of an organization. So
I feel like you just defined parenting.
Yeah, right.
Conscious
Let me
parenting.
tell you. So I graduated with my master's degree in industrial organizational psychology in 1999, 2000. I had my son in 2005. And I remember going back to work after having this baby and sitting behind my desk a few months in and going, wow, I use my degree and the things that I learned in grad school more in my home as a parent than I do in an organization. And I really felt really passionate about helping mothers in particularly gain the leadership skills that would really transform their families, but also help them develop leaders at a very early age. And I wanted to call it Mommy University.
I'm so triggered by the word mommy.
I know. So, but I didn't go forward with that idea. Because I was like, I realized, I don't know what changed for me, but I realized my work wasn't necessarily with moms in the capacity that I thought it was, but
Mm-hmm.
more on a broader scale. And I still love supporting just women in general because, women struggle to see themselves as a leader, but they're so naturally, like, leadership is their birthright.
Yeah. It always feels like, to me, that's why I'm such a fan when people say balance, and I'm like, no, that's like, it's an illusion. To me, it's an illusion of perfectionism, but it's alignment. And like you said, we're so good at leadership that if you just have a different lens, right? You're like, this is easy now, or easier. I'm not saying it's easy, but there's this sense of flow. There's this sense of like passion behind it, excitement. Like, look what you're creating. Look what you're doing. It's interesting because the podcast is called Mom is in Control. And I had so much resistance when that was created. I was working with a brand strategist, like, Heather, all your clients want to feel in control of their lives. And I am so passionate about working with women who wear a role, like one of their roles or hats that they wear is motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
And because there is this unique concoction of what your life looks like. It's very different than women without children.
Correct.
And we can learn from both. And it's not saying that one is better than the other. It's not. It's just like, someone else who owns a business and who doesn't own a business. Like, it's a different mindset. It's a different way of being in the world. And so I love this conversation about leadership in women. And I guess if someone wasn't familiar with this, they would think traditionally, and you kind of hit on it a little bit about compassion and vulnerability and all of that. And before we hit record, I say, what's lighting you up right now? And I just want to dive right into the money. Let's go right into the money, because I think this is going to open a whole can of worms to all of the other things that we're challenged with as women. But let's talk about women and money, because I hear this on a daily basis of like, I'm good. My husband's this, or, I can't because I have children. What is your perspective on like women making good money, doing what they're really fucking good at?
This is such a loaded question for me. I mean, my own, like, I'm still not sure I've unpacked all of my feelings about this, because I understand that women are very much called to nurture and be in the home. And there's still a tremendous amount of women out there who stay at home and mother their kids. But I have a real concern for that. Like, I have a legitimate concern because my kids are now 11 and 13. And I talked to a lot of women.
Think for a second.
I did, because I just had one who just turned 11. So
don't you hate that when they have a birthday? You're like, dang it, now I need to remember.
Yeah, she's 11 and 13. And so I do have a number of women who I am acquainted with who have stayed home, and now their kids are older, but they've been out of the workforce. Their skill set is 10 years behind. And I used to see this when I was working in corporate, and women would come in for jobs and they were not employable. They weren't current in their skill sets. They wanted to go back to work. They wanted to earn money for themselves because, they wanted to go and do something, and they had to constantly be asking their husbands for the money. And I think it's really hard. And that's like one aspect of it. And then you have women who have decided that they are going to work, and we've been so conditioned to not want more, not ask for more, not ask for anything, to downplay our skills, to shrink, that we're struggling to really articulate our worth and our gifts and our value in the workplace. And then you have the women who are in their own businesses, where frankly, it's even harder, because when you are in your own business and you're running your own business, you are the sole, all the responsibility for income is on you. It was very different when I showed up for my job and I did the things and somebody paid me, than when I stepped into my business and I had to create the income to pay me. like, and do the things to get paid. Right. So, and then our stories around, again, are even more compounded when we're in our own business around our value and our worth. And we're so great at giving, but we're not so great at receiving. And then, to be honest, what I'm seeing is a lot of women perpetuating this cycle among each other, where they get into business and then they start to barter, or they start to do things for free for each other, or they accept a lot of opportunities for free on the promise of an expanded network, the possibility of future clients or whatever. And it's exhausting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is perpetuating this like overwhelmed, chronically fatigued culture of motherhood and burnout.
Even with motherhood. I mean, so it was really interesting. I had a woman who wanted to work with me. She did not work, but she worked in the family business, but didn't get paid. Like, we see this a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, women are great at not being paid. Pay us, right? Pay me. So she was working in the business. She had all these responsibilities. She was overwhelmed and she needed some coaching. And she ultimately decided, her and her husband decided, that I was too expensive. But when I actually broke down the fact that she wasn't earning any money, and that if she paid my fee, it would be the equivalent of making like $8 an hour.
Mm-hmm. That's ridiculous.
Like, my mind was like blown, right? I'm like, here's what, like, if we just paid her $8 an hour, she could afford this coaching. So below minimum wage.
Ridiculous.
And that and I'm not coming at this from a place of judgment. I'm coming at this from a place of deep concern for the well-being of women. I'm coming at this from a place of how do we solve this? Because I think it's really a part of this system of keeping women small. Because if we give women any amount of money, it doesn't even have to be $1 million, they turn into economic powerhouses.
Mm-hmm. And
that's really, I think, the fear of everybody, is that you have all these women who become economically independent and vote with their dollars and fuck. Oh, can I say that on here?
You can say fuck as many times as you want.
I mean, what the hell's going to happen to this world if women actually have some financial backing and power behind them?
Mm-hmm. I see this all the time. Like, I know you're deep into supporting women in business, and I am literally hearing you say this, and it's the same. And my brain goes to time and energy and emotional capacity,
100%,
and worth, and how we show up in parenting and in other relationships in our lives, because we don't feel we are worthy, or we're not respecting ourselves. Therefore, other people aren't respecting us because we don't know how to implement a boundary. And I say we, and I'm not necessarily talking about myself, but just holding that space for all women. And what is your perspective on, when I grew up with a single mom. And so she worked, and she was like, Heather, you want something? You got to work for it. I always had this desire to work, but it was very impact focused, very passion focused. I had no desire to go work a 9-to-5 under fluorescent lighting. My body can't handle that. And quickly I discovered that. And I was like, wow, I either need to figure out how to enjoy my life in my work, because I couldn't do the whole stay home all day, every day with the kids. But I kind of wanted to find this mixture of how it worked for me, because I didn't want to be working 8 hours a week, but I also love being with my children. And I was like, what the fuck was the point of me telling you this? I just find, so I didn't know growing up that like women were oppressed. I didn't understand this, because my mom was like, you want it, you work for it. And then now as an adult, talking to so many women, realizing that these are, yes, cultural, people always projecting their story and belief onto you of like who you need to be in the world. But what is your perspective on what is it going to take for women to literally look at themselves in the mirror and say, enough is enough. Like, I'm done with all of this bullshit that people have projected onto me, or the expectations that I've put onto myself. And this goes to, I'm not even talking about, oh, now I need to make money. Now I need to do this. It's like how you look, how you're treating your partner, what you're doing for everybody else. How long are you going to wipe your children's ass? Like, everything. So what do you see? Is it just a specific type of person with a personality trait that's like, I'm done with this bullshit? Or is it a skill that we can actually cultivate on a daily basis with micro habits?
Oh gosh. I think if I had the answer to that, I'd probably be like a trillionaire. Because I don't know, I can speak from my own journey. I was a lot like you. I was actually raised, when I look back at my upbringing, I was raised very gender neutral. Like, I wasn't raised I wasn't a girly princess or anything like that. 100% I had to work for whatever it was that I wanted. I was working by the time I was 14, worked my way through college, really enjoyed the independence of having my own money, went into corporate, climbed to the ladder, got to the place where I had the pinnacle of that, what I had envisioned for myself, and realized that, money wasn't the end all be all. Mm-hmm. And that I think we're missing, we have this either or perspective, but there's an and, right? So we can have money and we can have our version of balance, or whatever that means, alignment to you. I remember sitting very painstakingly over lunch with a colleague of mine, debating on whether or not I was going to have children. And I thought that it was either I had children and I stayed at home, or I worked and I didn't have children. Like, I didn't realize it was either this or that in my mind. And I don't know why my mind immediately went to either or.
You just gave me the biggest aha moment.
Oh.
I always talk about the all or nothing attitude.
Yeah.
And I never perceived it like that. And that is the cultural conversation about, you either work or you don't work. There's no in between. There's no seasons of work where you're just like doing it, making a few $100 a month or a few $1,000s a month, or you're, scaling. Like, there's so many possibilities.
There's so many possibilities. So, it didn't dawn on me until much later after I had kids. Because then it was like, well, then it was like, either I work in a corporate setting or I don't work. Like, I didn't understand that I could, even though I've always wanted my own business, I didn't quite understand how to be a mom and have my own business. And like, that's why you can't think about this shit too much. Like, you just have to take action and let clarity come as you just take the action, people. Just do it.
I don't think a lot.
Don't think too much.
People are like, what is your strategy? I'm like, I just implement. And then
just take action.
Yeah. And when I fail, quote unquote fail, I keep going. I don't really think about the failure. I'm like, oh, that didn't work. And oh, wow, wasted money on that. Just keep going, keep going, keep going.
Keep moving. Yeah. Everything to me is an experiment. It's like the laboratory of life. But here's the thing. Unfortunately, I think that you have to be in a pretty significant amount of pain to make change, to make a change. I think every moment that I've had that has been transformational has come from me face planting. And unfortunately, women, I think biologically, have a very high threshold for pain. Yeah. We're designed to push babies out of our hoo-has, right? Like, with no drugs in a field somewhere or in a tent. So I think we just naturally have this very high threshold for pain. So we let things get really bad. We let ourselves get really depressed or miserable or anxious or sick or whatever. And then we have that crisis moment and we're like, oh, well, now everything's like, fuck this and fuck that. Right. And we start making decisions, but how can we get ourselves to, so this has always been my question, because one of my deepest moments of surrender was because I had my back up against the wall. And my question to myself is always, how can I surrender before my back is up against the wall?
I love this. I've noticed that as time has gone on and my back against the wall, like, Heather, you're going to die. You have stage 4 cancer. Oh shit. Now I need to figure out how to feel alive. And then it's like contentment comes. You're like, I'm good now. I'm good now. What does that look like for you? Like, how do you do that? How do you deal with that now when you're like, I'm not against the wall? What do you do when you can feel the next level coming? How do you push yourself to do that?
Well, I have this commitment to myself to just live outside my comfort zone. And that can look like anything. I'll never forget, I had the most profound moment on a slide at a water park. It was probably the summer of 2015 or 16. So I was either like just starting my business or maybe a year in. And I'm realizing that I'm in so much fear that it's frozen me, and I'm not following up with people who I've had sales calls with. I'm not inviting people to get on sales calls with me. I'm not asking for referrals, because at this time I was building my one-on-one business. Right. And those are all the things you need to be doing to build your one-on-one business. I'm not having conversations with my existing clients that I need to be having around their coaching and their behaviors and things like that. Like because I'm afraid they're going to fire me. Right. Like, so all this stuff, like all this fear and scarcity feelings and survival. And I'm at this water park with my family, and I'm looking up at this water slide that's like, a 40-foot drop. And I'm like, it's such a metaphor for where I am right now, right? Like this paralyzing fear from shooting down this slide. And I think it took me probably a good 30 minutes to get myself all the way up on the slide. I mean, these teeny boppers are running up, and I'm like, God damn them. They're going to win. They're going to go down the slide, and like, they're going to have their moment. And like, or it's not even, they don't even care. Like, and I need to have this moment. So I managed to like claw my way up to the top of the slide. I'm standing up there, and it's so creepy because you stand on this platform, and then this voice goes, 3, 2, 1, and the platform comes out from underneath you, and you whoosh down. And I'm watching people, and it's really panicking me. And so I'm deep breathing, very much deep breathing. I'm very into my like self-care.
You're like back practice. Into the moment. You're like, I'm gonna have a panic.
I'm like melting down, right? Having like a serious meltdown. And so I go down this slide, it flips you upside down. You get the biggest ass wedgie ever. And I mean, it takes seconds, like 15 seconds. And I remember getting up off the slide, sopping wet, and grabbing my phone. And I'm following up with people. I'm like, we need to get back on that call, and just checking in, and are you doing this, and let's go, and hey, let's do this. And I'm like, whoa, right? Like the power of getting outside your comfort zone and having that breakthrough. And it's only a water slide, people. Like, we don't need to go in the gym and lift a weight heavier than you think you can lift. Like, that's outside your comfort zone, right? Like, run a little further than you thought you could run yesterday. So for me, it's really just about practicing living with my back up against the wall in a way, right? But not in a way that's so life-threatening. Not in a way
because it's all in your mind anyways. I mean, we have the negativity bias. We have our brain is safe for, or created, was designed for the caveman years. So we have to realize that a lot of us are still living in that mindset or way of being when we are safe. We are safe, but we're acting like we're not. So when
a lot of my mantras start with, it's safe to, I'm safe. It's safe for me to earn a great living. It's safe for me to make more than enough.
It's safe for me to go down a water slide.
It's safe for me to go down a water slide. It's safe for me to ask for a referral. It's safe for me to have an uncomfortable conversation with my kid. It's safe for me to draw a boundary with my spouse.
How has cultivating this mindset supported you in your mothering?
So I think when you're when you do the bold thing, like I have this belief that one bold action changes everything. So many women are running around trying to do all the things when really they just need to sit back and ask themselves, what's the one thing they're unwilling to do?
I
Right?
love that.
So, and a lot of times it's a simple conversation, right? We're so conflict averse, or we imagine that things are going to be more conflicting than they need to be. So, for me with my kids, it's usually around a conversation or setting a boundary or being very honest with them and vulnerable and allowing your kids to see you vulnerable.
You're giving me so many aha moments. So I just launched my Understanding Your Children's Behavior mini course. And I asked people, like, what do you want to learn? And they said, I want to discover how to not parent from a place of fear. And to me, what I hear is I need to discover how to not live in fear, because they're so aligned. You can hold a boundary. You can implement a boundary with your children and sit with this story of like, they're going to hate me forever. They're going to be talking about this in therapy when they're older. But there is a way that you can communicate that with love and compassion. And I know this sucks, but let's talk about it. But this is the boundary. Like, this is the non-negotiable. I'm sorry, in my house, there's no video games. I'm like, guys, I refuse to purchase a video game system. And we've had many, many conversations about it. And I've had many stories in my mind about it. And I'm like, listen, this is just one boundary I am not willing to bend and be flexible on. And yet I hear so many women say, how can I put boundaries around screen time? How can I put boundaries around whatever? I'm like, what is stopping you? Well, they won't do this. They won't do that. I'm like, no, we need to take a stand for how we want to feel, what you want your home culture to feel like.
Yes, your Fortnite problem is not a Fortnite problem. It's a leadership problem.
Ooh. Is that a podcast title? Did you write that down? That's how my brain thinks. Podcast titles. Fortnite problem is not a Fortnite problem. It's a leadership problem. Explain that for someone who's like, wow, interesting.
All right. So we did allow video games in my house for a very short period of time. And then it took us about 2 years to navigate our way out of the video games. So we are now video game free. And I don't regret allowing the video games. It was actually probably one of the best experiences and learnings for my son to understand addiction and to understand the depths of addiction and what that will do for you in your life. And then him making the choice to remove video games from the home, his own choice. He was a late to video games kid, so he didn't get his first gaming console until he was in the middle of 6th grade. And so when he gave it up, he was in the middle of the 8th grade. And he's been 6 months now without video games. But we went through the whole Fortnite. And we had boundaries on it. We actually bought Disney Circle, shuts down our Wi-Fi, because what I realized very, very quickly is that the new sneaking out is getting up in the middle of the night and playing video games. Yeah. And so we completely shut down our Wi-Fi at 9:30 at night, and that's bedtime. And probably even talk to the kids about shutting it down earlier next year, because they have to get up earlier. And so, he was really into Fortnite, and my God, and I was like all over my Facebook page with moms complaining about Fortnite. Their kids aren't coming down to dinner. It's like, I'm like, this is a boundary issue. This isn't a Fortnite issue. This isn't your child's behavior. This is your behavior manifesting in your child's reactions and behavior around Fortnite. So if you don't have great boundaries, your child's not going to have great boundaries. If you're not going to communicate your family's values, your kid's not going to understand what your family's values are.
Yeah. And it's just exposing.
And then taking it one step further, like you would in an organization. What are your boundaries? Define the boundary, operationalize the boundary, the value, define the value, operationalize the value, create boundaries from your values, use your values as a filter, right? This is like what we would do in a business. Well, you have to do that in your home too. That's why I said I was like, utilizing more of this at my home than I was in my business. And so if you have a value that you come together and eat dinner as a family X number of days a week, then that's non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Period. It's a boundary.
And then this feels like it comes full circle to really holding that boundary. Like you're going to have to implement it over and over and over again. You're going to have many conversations. The whole children will push against it. They're going to test it. They're going to be like, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? That's the whole point. And adults do this too in society. That's why there's police officers and like traffic regulations and all of that stuff. This is, they'll push against it. And that is your job as the leader to reinforce. And you don't have to do it aggressively. You can do it with love and kindness and compassion. But it's just how you show up. You're constantly going to be tested.
It's your job as a leader to be well rested enough to continue to uphold the boundary, because the second you fatigue in any way, shape, or form, which is why moms today are struggling with boundaries, is because everybody's exhausted and busy and burned out. It's very hard to uphold a boundary when you don't have the energetic capacity to do so. Yeah.
Yeah. And coming back, I'm like, yep. I remember when my middle son was a toddler, I gave up coffee for a really, really long time, which sounds counterintuitive, but every time I would drink coffee and my nutrition was not on game, I would get anxiety. And so his voice to this day, he's just very high energy, I would go into fight or flight, and then I would scream and yell and be like, on edge all the time. So I just gave up coffee for a while, and it radically transformed because I had to figure out, okay, I can't be exhausted. I can't be overwhelmed. And he really taught me that. And he taught me the morning routine and all of that. It was just these little micro action steps that I needed to take. But if I wasn't listening, I would have been persecuting my son and blaming him and being like, you need to stop, which is what a lot of the symptoms of what the parents come to me for. So, circling back, what do you want to be remembered for at the end of your days? Your life is over, done. How do you want to be remembered? One, by your children, and two, by the women that you've worked with?
So, I want to be known by, that's like a really intense question, Heather. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, I think that what I want to be known for is raising the bar for people's performance in the world so that they can actually reach their potential. I want to be known for cultivating more bold leaders on the planet. And it 100% starts at home. It starts with me, and then it starts at home. And, it's interesting because people are like, I want to have this massive impact. I want to impact all the peoples in the world. And, it's so much to bite off when you think about it that way. But if you can just impact one person who's in front of you, if you as a mom can just impact your child, but then it goes beyond that because, we do a lot of work. We do a lot of coaching in my house with my kids. We do a lot of work on what it looks like to truly perform your best without all the beliefs around it going to lead to burnout. So what's the easiest way that you can do your best? How is it like, when you leverage all your gifts and you know what your strengths are, how it's not that hard to do amazing things in the world. And so we're teaching our kids this, and we work a lot with my son who's 13, because he's just a little more further along, you know, in his capabilities to understand some of this stuff. And this year too, we started him on a bank account. So we're teaching him, you know, money management. And now his friends come over and he thinks his friends aren't going to want to talk to me, you know, because I'm mom. And like their parents are like, oh, like so-and-so wants to move in with you. Like they want to be a Newman now, because we're teaching them how to make money. We're teaching them how to save their money. We're teaching them how to navigate a bank account. We're teaching them how to navigate goals. We're teaching them how to, they're at the point where they really want to earn some money. And they're running around trying to do odd jobs for people. And they're very introverted, these two boys, and they're very shy about going up and knocking on people's doors, right? And we're telling them, like, here's how you can share what you're doing and why these people should hire you. And they're being met with like phenomenal success.
Wow.
And so now it's not just one kid, it's two kids. And then next thing you know, like one more is interested. And I've got 3 young boys here who are listening. And to me, that is really, you know, what I want to be known for. Like when these boys go off and they're 25 years old and they're not fucking up their money because, you know, they sat around my kitchen table and learned something. I raised the bar. I created more bold leaders.
Mm. Or if they do fuck up their money, guess what? They already know mom's not going to bail them out.
No.
She's going to coach them. She's going to say, awesome. Yep. What action led to this? What behavior led to this?
Yeah.
Get yourself back up. Let's start again. I love this conversation because I think too often we just have old mindset, lizard brain. It's like old crap that needs to be decluttered and a new set of skills and beliefs implemented. And I really appreciate you, Tara, for being bold enough to take this stand for women, because it needs to happen. And like you said, if you can impact one person and that person impacts somebody else, that's how you make the impact. So how do you help? What are you up to? I know you have Brave Society and you have a podcast. So where can people find you and get more of you if they want?
Yeah. So my favorite place to hang out is Instagram. And I'm at the Tara Newman on Instagram. After years of wrestling and battling with social media, I just found my platform and I'm sticking with it. And that's Instagram at the Tara Newman. I do have a podcast. I love podcasting. It's the Bold Leadership Revolution. And you can find me there as well. I'm super accessible and I love talking to people and starting conversations, because especially as moms, we need more conversations that are real and honest and raw, because I don't know about you. I mean, I'm sure you realize this. I feel like where there's so much shame.
Oh, yeah.
Around mothering and doing it right. And, you know, what happens when your kid makes a poor choice or you make a poor choice or whatever.
Yeah. Or our children's behavior is a reflection of us. I've let that one go a long time ago.
Yeah. And we really need to be having more real and open and honest conversations, so motherhood feels less lonely.
Yeah. And women in general, right? Whether that's in business or corporate, or you are work at home, work from home, at the core of it, we're all human. And work to me is just self-expression. Like that's just a way to create. It's like a creative outlet to give back and to make an impact, because that's just kind of what my business is, or my work is focused on. But I think it's just so important. There's so many aspects of us besides mothering. That's what I'm trying to say.
There is.
Yeah. And for whatever reason, I mean, yeah, there's so much to this conversation. I'm going to have you back on. Because we could be talking for hours and hours.
I know. I'd love to come back on. It's an important topic.
It is. Well, thank you again, Tara. And I look forward to connecting soon.
Thanks, Heather.